Commander Jake Harrison sat at his desk on Luna Station, staring at the screens that showed empty space. The morning shift had been quiet, just like most days. Nothing ever happened out here at the edge of human space. He was about to grab his coffee when the emergency alert started blinking red. "Commander, we're getting something strange," said Communications Officer Rick Moore from across the control room. His voice was excited, but confused. "It's not like anything I've seen before." Jake walked over to Rick's station and looked at the display. Strange symbols were moving across the screen, and there was a sound that seemed almost like music. But underneath it, Jake could hear something that made his skin crawl. Fear. Pure terror in a voice that wasn't human. "Can you make any sense of it?" Jake asked. "Not yet, sir. But it's definitely a distress call. I'm sending it to Dr. Carter right now." Dr. Lisa Carter was the best language expert on Luna Station. If anyone could figure out what the message said, it would be her. Jake had worked with Lisa for 3 years, and she had never failed to crack a code or translate a message. 20 minutes later, Lisa rushed into the command center. Her face was pale, and she was holding a data pad with both hands like it might explode. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "This message is from aliens. Real aliens, not just some joke or test." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. In all his years with the Earth Defense Force, they had never made contact with alien life. There had been theories and guesses, but never proof. "What do they want?" he asked. Lisa looked at her datapad and started reading. "They call themselves the Zalfini Republic. They're asking for help. Their worlds are being attacked by something called the Korthuk Empire." She paused and looked up at Jake. "Commander, they're asking specifically for help from Earth. They call us the Legendary Deathworld Warriors of Terra." "Deathworld Warriors?" Jake repeated. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure yet, but there's more. They say most of the galaxy thinks humans are just stories. Myths about creatures from a planet so dangerous that living there turned us into ultimate fighters." Before Jake could respond, another alarm went off. This time, it was the long-range scanners. Something was coming toward Luna Station, and it was big. "Sir, we have an unknown vessel approaching," called out Navigator Amy Foster. "It's using some kind of technology I don't recognize. No engines that I can detect, but it's moving fast." "Weapons?" Jake asked. "None that I can see, sir. It looks more like a transport ship." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Let them approach, but keep our defenses ready. Rick, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we have first contact." The alien ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. It was smooth and curved, almost like it had grown instead of being made. There were no sharp edges or visible weapons. When it stopped near Luna Station, Jake could see small lights moving across its surface like stars. "They're asking permission to come aboard," Rick reported. "The message is imperfect. English now. How did they learn our language so fast?" Jake wondered. "Maybe they've been listening to our broadcasts for longer than we think." Lisa suggested. An hour later, Jake stood in the docking bay with a full security team. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and 3 figures stepped out. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with gray skin that looked thick and wrinkled. Their faces were long with kind eyes, and they moved slowly like they didn't want to scare anyone. The one in front spoke in a deep, gentle voice. "I am Ambassador Thelvas of the Zalfini Republic. Thank you for allowing us to come aboard your station." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Commander Harrison. Your message said you needed help." The alien's large eyes seemed to fill with sadness. "Yes, Commander. Our worlds are dying. The Korthuk Empire has been destroying everything in their path for 10 cycles. We have tried to fight them, but we are not warriors. We are farmers and teachers and artists. We do not know how to kill." "And you think we do?" Jake asked. They. Stories say the humans come from a world of death, a place where everything tries to kill you from the moment you are born. They say this made you into the greatest fighters in the galaxy. We thought these stories were just tales to frighten children, but our situation is desperate. We had to try. Lisa stepped closer to the ambassador. How many worlds have you lost? 17 of our worlds are gone completely. The Korthik take our people as slaves and turn our planets into factories for their war machines. 5 more worlds are under attack right now. We have maybe days before they fall too. Jake looked at his security team, then back at the alien. What makes you think we can help when you couldn't help yourselves? Ambassador Thelvis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because we have seen the Korthik destroy 100 species, and they all tried to fight the same way, with honor and rules and mercy. But the stories about humans say you fight differently. You fight to win, no matter what it takes. We'll need to contact Earth Command, Jake said. This isn't a decision I can make alone. Of course, the ambassador replied. But please hurry. Every hour we delay, more of our people die. As Jake watched the alien delegation settle into guest quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't, and somehow their reputation as fighters had spread across the galaxy before they even knew there was a galaxy to spread to. He walked back to his office and started writing his report to Earth Command. By tomorrow, either the Earth Defense Force would be heading to war against an alien empire, or humanity would be turning its back on an entire civilization that was crying for help. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of universe they were really living in. 3 days later, Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the EDF cruiser Thunderstrike as it moved through space faster than light. The ship was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, but even Ben wasn't sure it would be enough for what they were about to face. How long until we reach the Zalfani system? He asked Navigator Amy Foster. 18 hours, sir, Amy replied, checking her instruments. The quantum drive is working perfectly. Ben nodded and walked over to where Dr. Lisa Carter was sitting with Ambassador Thelvis. The alien had joined them for the journey to his home system, and Lisa had been asking him questions for the past 2 days. What have you learned, Doctor? Ben asked. Lisa looked up from her notes. Captain, everything we thought we knew about the galaxy is wrong. There are thousands of intelligent species out there, and they've been trading and talking with each other for millions of years. Then, why haven't they contacted us before? Ambassador Thelvis answered in his deep, slow voice. Because your world is forbidden, Captain Rodriguez. The Galactic Council marked Earth as a death world over 50,000 years ago. No ship was allowed to go there. A death world? Ben asked. A planet so dangerous that nothing should be able to live there. The ambassador explained. Your world has ice ages that freeze everything. Volcanoes that destroy entire continents. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Storms that can level cities. Most worlds in the galaxy are stable and safe. Life there grows slowly and peacefully. Doctor. Carter showed Ben her datapad. Captain, I've been learning about other species, and it's amazing. The Zalfani evolved on a world where the weather never changes. It's always the same temperature, and food grows everywhere. They never had to fight for anything. Never had to fight? Ben repeated. Never, Ambassador Thelvis confirmed. Fighting is not natural for most galactic species. We solve problems by talking. War is something we learned about from watching. The Korthik Empire, and we are very bad at it. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh joined the conversation. He had been working with the alien refugees who had come aboard to help with repairs and maintenance. Captain, you should hear some of the stories. These folks tell about their home planets. No predators, no diseases, no natural disasters. Their biggest worry used to be deciding what to plant in their gardens. Ben shook his head. Then how did the Korthic Empire become so powerful? They are different, the ambassador said sadly. The Korthak evolved on a world with some dangers, though nothing like yours. They learned to fight and conquer. For 3,000 years, they have been taking over peaceful worlds. No one has been able to stop them because no one else knows how to be truly violent. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker, the ship's tactical officer, had been studying the battle recordings the Zalfani had provided. He joined the group with a serious expression. Captain, I've analyzed their combat footage. The Korthak have better weapons and ships than the Zalfani, but their tactics are basic. They just attack straight ahead with overwhelming force. They've never had to face an enemy that fights smart. What do you mean? Ben asked. They don't use tricks or traps. They don't fake retreats or make surprise attacks. They just come straight at their enemies and shoot until they win. It works because everyone they fight does the same thing, just with weaker weapons. Dr. Carter looked excited. That's what I've been trying to understand. Captain, these alien species are smart, but they think differently than we do. They don't have words for concepts like ambush or guerrilla warfare, or acceptable losses. Acceptable losses? Ambassador Thelvis asked, sounding confused. When you're willing to let some of your people die to save more of your people, Ben explained. The alien's eyes went wide with shock. You would sacrifice your own soldiers? If it meant saving innocent civilians, yes, Ben said. We call it the greater good. Ambassador Thelvis was quiet for a long moment. This is why the stories call you Deathworlders. You think about death and survival in ways we cannot understand. Communications Officer Rick Moore's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we're receiving messages from the Zalfani fleet. The situation is getting worse. Ben walked to the communication station and listened to the translated messages. The news was not good. 2 more Zalfani worlds had fallen to the Korthak Empire in the past day. The alien fleet was falling back toward their home system, but they were badly outnumbered. How many ships do the Korthak have? Ben asked. Ambassador. Thelvis looked at his own communication device. Our scouts report over 200 Korthak warships in the attacking fleet. We have maybe 60 ships left that can still fight. And how many ships does Earth have coming to help? The ambassador asked hopefully. Ben was quiet for a moment. Just us. The bridge went silent. Even the Zalfani refugees who had been working nearby stopped what they were doing. 1 ship? Ambassador Thelvis asked. Against 200? 1 ship, Ben confirmed. But it's a human ship with a human crew. Dr. Carter spoke up. Ambassador, can you tell us more about human reputation in the galaxy? What exactly do these stories say about us? The alien thought for a moment. The stories say that humans come from a world where everything tries to kill them. The weather, the animals, the ground itself. They say this made humans into creatures that can survive anything and fight anyone. The stories say that a single human warrior is worth 100 normal soldiers. And you believe these stories? Ben asked. I did not until I met you, Ambassador. Thelvis replied. But listening to you talk about fighting and death and sacrifice, I am beginning to understand why the stories exist. You speak of terrible things as if they are normal. Sergeant Major Kate Williams entered the bridge from the Marine deck. She had been training with her soldiers for the past 3 days, preparing for whatever they might face. Captain, my Marines are ready, she reported. We've studied the alien ship designs and figured out the best ways to board them. But, sir, we're going to need more than just good tactics if we're facing those odds. Ben looked around at his crew, then at the alien ambassador. Ambassador, I need you to understand something. Humans don't fight fair. We don't follow rules when our friends are in danger. If we do this, we're going to do things that might shock you. What kind of things? The ambassador asked nervously. Whatever it takes to win, Ben replied. That's what Deathworlders do. As the thunderstrike continued toward the battle zone, the crew prepared for what might be humanity's first real test on the galactic stage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and heading into unknown danger. But they were human, and that might just be enough. The thunderstrike dropped out of hyperspace, right into the middle of hell. Captain Ben Rodriguez gripped his command chair as explosions lit up the darkness around them. Zalfini ships were dying everywhere he looked, their graceful hulls breaking, apart under the brutal fire of Corphic warships. Battle stations, Ben shouted over the noise of alarms. Amy, get us into the fight. Steve, target their biggest ship. Navigator Amy Foster's hands flew over her controls as she steered the thunderstrike between burning wrecks. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Parker locked weapons onto a massive Corthuk dreadnought that was tearing through a group of smaller Zalfini vessels. Captain, we're getting calls from the Zalfini fleet, reported Communications Officer Rick Moore. They're asking who we are. Tell them the cavalry has arrived, Ben replied. Steve, fire everything we have at that dreadnought. The thunderstrike's weapons opened up with a roar that shook the entire ship. Human railguns and plasma cannons hit the Corthic ship with more firepower than it had ever faced. The alien vessel's shields flared and died, and holes appeared in its armor. On the Corthic bridge, Commander Vextar stared at his screens in confusion. What kind of ship is that? Where did it come from? His tactical officer checked the readings twice before answering. Unknown design, sir. But those weapons, they're using kinetic projectiles at incredible speeds. And some kind of plasma technology we don't recognize. One ship, Vextar growled. Destroy it. 20 Corthic fighters turned toward the thunderstrike, but Captain Rodriguez was ready for them. Kate, launch the Marines. Danny, give me everything. The engines have. Sergeant Major Kate Williams was already strapped into her drop pod with her best soldiers. Corporal Alex Turner checked his weapons one last time, while Private First Class Nina Bell made sure her explosives were secure. Remember, Kate told her team over the comm, these aliens have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. Use that. The drop pods shot out of the thunderstrike like bullets, heading straight for the Corthic dreadnought. The alien fighters tried to stop them, but the pods were too small and fast. Most of them made it through. Alex Turner's pod hit the Corthic ship's hull with a crash that would have killed a normal person. But humans were built to survive crashes. He activated his cutting torch and burned through the alien metal like it was paper. Inside the Corthic ship, the aliens were waiting. They were big, maybe 7 feet tall, with thick purple skin and 4 arms. They carried energy weapons and wore heavy armor. They looked like they had never lost a fight in their lives, but they had never fought humans. Nina Bell rolled a grenade down the corridor and counted to 3. The explosion knocked down 5 Corthic soldiers, and she was through the smoke before. They could recover. Her rifle fired bullets that punched through their armor like it wasn't there. What are these creatures? One Corthic soldier screamed into his comm. They fight like demons. On the Thunderstrike's bridge, Captain Rodriguez was fighting his own battle. Corthic ships surrounded them, firing with enough power to destroy a small moon. But Ben had been training for this his whole life. Amy, emergency turn to starboard. Steve, hit that cruiser with everything. The Thunderstrike spun and dove like a fighter instead of a capital ship. The Corthic couldn't predict where it would go next. Their massive weapons kept missing. Wow. The human ship's guns found their targets every time. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh's voice came over the intercom. Captain, Engines are at 120%. We can't keep this up much longer. Just give me 5 more minutes, Danny. Ben replied. Inside the Korthik dreadnought, Sergeant Major Williams had reached the bridge. The alien commander was twice her size and covered in scars from 100 battles. He looked at the small human woman and laughed. "You are just one tiny creature," he said in broken English. "How do you expect to defeat me?" Kate smiled and pulled the pin from her last grenade. "I don't plan to defeat you. I plan to take you with me." The Korthik commander's eyes went wide. In all their wars, no enemy had ever been willing to die just to kill them. It was insane. It was impossible. It was human. The explosion tore through the bridge, and the dreadnought began to spin out of control. Kate and her Marines had destroyed the ship's command center, but at a terrible cost. On the Thunderstrike, Dr. Lisa Carter was treating wounded Zalfini refugees who had been rescued from damaged ships. Chief Medical Officer Helen Gray worked beside her, using human medical techniques that seemed like magic to the aliens. "How are you saving them?" asked the Zalfini doctor. "These injuries should be fatal." "On Earth, people get hurt like this all the time," Helen replied as she worked. "Car crashes, building collapses, animal attacks. We learned to fix things that other species can't." The battle was turning. The Korthik had expected an easy victory against the peaceful Zalfini, but now they were fighting something they had never seen before. Human ships that moved like living things. Human soldiers who would die to complete their missions. Human doctors who could bring the dead back to life. Ambassador Thelvas watched from the Thunderstrike's observation deck as more human ships arrived. The Earth Defense Force had sent a full battle group, and they were tearing through the Korthik. Fleet like wolves through sheep. "Now I understand the stories," he said to Dr. Carter. "You really are Deathworlders." "What does that mean to you now?" Lisa asked. "It means that when peaceful people call for help, the universe sends predators to protect them," the ambassador replied. "And I have never been more grateful for predators in my life." Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship. "All hands, prepare for the final push. We're going to finish this." The Thunderstrike and her sister ships moved forward like a pack of hunters. The Korthik Empire had ruled through fear and superior firepower for thousands of years. But they had never faced an enemy that was born from a world where only the strongest, smartest, and most ruthless survived. They had never faced humans. The battle was far from over, but the Korthik were learning a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. When you threaten the innocent, Deathworlders answer with thunder. 2 weeks after the first battle, Fleet Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the EDF flagship Vengeance, watching as more human ships arrived in Zalfini space. The news of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Dozens of alien species were asking for help against the Korthik Empire. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all over the sector," said Colonel Janet Price, his ground forces commander. "The Korthik are pulling back from 17 different systems. They've never retreated like this before." Marcus nodded as he studied the star charts. "They're scared. For the first time in their history, they've met something they can't just crush with brute force." Captain Ben Rodriguez entered the bridge, still wearing bandages from the recent battle. His ship, the Thunderstrike, was being repaired after taking heavy damage, but he refused to stay in the medical bay. "Admiral, we've got a problem," Ben said. "The Korthik aren't just retreating. They're destroying everything they leave behind. Entire planets are being bombed until nothing lives on them." "Scorched earth tactics," Marcus replied grimly. "If they can't have these worlds, they'll make sure no one else can either." Dr. Lisa Carter joined them, carrying a datapad full of translated messages. "Admiral, we're getting desperate calls from the ethery homeworld. The Korthik have been using the crystalline people as living batteries to power their war machines. If we don't act soon, there won't be any ethery left to save. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the ethery system. It was heavily defended, with 3 Korthik fleets protecting the occupied world. How many ships do we have ready for combat? 47 human vessels, plus about 100 ships from various alien species that want to help, Colonel Price reported. But most of the alien ships are cargo vessels or exploration craft. They're not built for war. And we'll teach them, Marcus decided. Janet, I want you to take a team down to the ethery homeworld. Your job is to start a resistance movement and get those people fighting back. Sir, the ethery are crystalline beings. They don't have bodies like us. How do I train living crystals to fight? You'll figure it out, Marcus said with confidence. That's what humans do. 3 days later, Colonel Price's dropship landed on the dark side of the ethery homeworld. The planet's surface was covered with massive mining operations where Korthik machines were harvesting the crystalline beings like crops. Major Chris Anderson, Price's second-in-command, set up a temporary base in a cave system, the first ethery. They met was a being called Crystal Song of Morning, who communicated through patterns of light that flickered across its body. The Korthik use us as power sources, Crystal Song explained through a translation device. They connect us to their machines and drain our life force. Most of us die within days. How many of your people are still free? Janet asked. Perhaps 1,000, hiding in the deep caves. But we are not fighters. We are artists and philosophers. We create beauty, not destruction. Then we'll teach you, Major Anderson said. Not to be destroyers, but to be protectors. Janet spent the next week working with the ethery, learning about their abilities. The crystalline beings could communicate instantly across vast distances, control electrical systems, and even overload Korthik technology by channeling pure energy through their bodies. Your people aren't weak, Janet told Crystal Song. You're just using your strength in the wrong way. Instead of creating art, create chaos in their systems. Instead of making music, make their machines scream. Meanwhile, in space, Admiral Stone was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Ships from dozens of species had joined the human fleet, but most of their crews had never seen real combat. Commander Jake Harrison, now in charge of training the alien volunteers, found himself teaching basic tactics to beings who had never heard of war. A group of plant-like creatures from the Verdani system kept trying to negotiate with enemy ships instead of shooting them. No, Jake explained patiently. When someone is trying to kill you, you don't ask them to stop. You make them stop. But violence is wrong, protested Captain Leaf Dancer, the Verdani commander. Surely there must be a peaceful solution. The peaceful solution is winning the war, so no one else has to die, Jake replied. Sometimes you have to fight to protect peace. On the ethery homeworld, the resistance was growing. Crystal Song and her people had learned to use their natural abilities as weapons. They could shut down Korthik vehicles by overloading their electrical systems. They could communicate silently to coordinate attacks. Most importantly, they had learned to be angry. The Korthik killed my light brother, Crystal Song told Janet, her body flickering with new patterns of red and orange. They drained him until he went dark forever. I want them to pay. Good, Janet replied. Anger can be a weapon if you use it right. The first coordinated attack came at dawn on the 7th day, while Admiral Stone's fleet engaged the Korthik. Ships in orbit, Colonel Price's ground forces struck at the mining facilities. The ethery proved to be devastating fighters once they understood the concept of war. Crystal Song led a group of her people into the main power plant that controlled a mining operation. Instead of being captured and used as batteries, they became living bombs. overloading the entire facility with more energy than it could handle. The explosion lit up the sky and could be seen from orbit. Admiral Stone watched from his command ship as the Korthic ground forces began to panic. Their slaves were fighting back, and they didn't know how to handle it. Admiral, we're getting reports from other occupied worlds, reported his communications officer. The resistance is spreading. Species that had been slaves for decades are starting to fight back. Marcus smiled grimly. The Korthic's greatest weakness is that they've never had to deal with people who refuse to stay beaten. They don't understand that sometimes making someone a slave just makes them more dangerous. On the planet's surface, Major Anderson was coordinating with freed Ethery to rescue more of their people from the mining camps. Each rescue operation grew larger as more crystalline beings joined the fight. How did you learn to fight so quickly? Anderson asked Crystal Song after a particularly successful raid. We learned from watching you humans, she replied, her body now pulsing with confident blue light. You showed us that sometimes the only way to create peace is to destroy those who would destroy peace. The war was changing. What had started as a desperate call for help had become a galaxy-wide rebellion against the Korthic Empire. Species that had been conquered decades ago were remembering how to fight. Worlds that had been written off as lost were throwing off their chains dot, and at the center of it all were the humans, the Deathworlders who had answered the call for help with thunder and lightning. They were teaching the galaxy that predators could be protectors, and that sometimes the most peaceful thing you could do was to make war on those who would harm the innocent. The Korthak Empire was learning that when you wake up a sleeping giant, you better be ready for the consequences. 6 months after the first battle, the largest fleet in galactic history surrounded Korthik Prime, the home world of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. Fleet Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as ships from hundreds of different species took their positions. Admiral, all fleets report ready, said General Patricia Murphy, who had been placed in charge of the ground invasion. We have 2 million troops from 47 different species, plus our human marines. Marcus nodded as he looked at the massive planet below. Korthik Prime was a fortress world, covered with weapons and shields that had never been tested in real battle. The Korthik had always been the attackers, never the defenders. Remember, Marcus told his officers, our job isn't just to win this battle, it's to end this war forever. The galaxy needs to see that bullies can be stopped. On the planet's surface, Emperor Volthok sat in his throne room, surrounded by his generals. The massive Korthak leader was 12 feet tall and covered in scars from 1,000 battles. He had built his empire on the idea that the strong should rule the weak, and he couldn't understand how his forces were losing to creatures from a death world. How many ships do the humans have? He demanded. Our scouts report over 800 vessels in the attacking fleet, replied General Kexmore, his tactical advisor. But only about 60 of them are human ships. Then why are we losing? Vorthik roared. We have defended this world for 3,000 years. Because, my lord, General Kexmore said quietly, the other species are fighting like humans now. They have learned to be predators. In space above the planet, Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien ships. His own vessel, the Thunderstrike, had been rebuilt and was stronger than ever. Beside him flew Zalfany cruisers, ethery crystal ships, and vessels from dozens of other species. All ships, this is Rodriguez, he broadcast to the fleet. Remember what we've taught you. Don't fight fair. Fight to win. The battle began with a massive bombardment from the Korthik defense platforms. Energy beams and missiles filled space, trying to destroy the attacking fleet before it could land troops on the planet. But the Allied ships didn't attack in straight lines like the Korthik expected. Navigator Amy Foster piloted the Thunderstrike through the defensive fire like she was dancing. The ship spun and dove and rolled, following attack patterns that no Korthic computer could predict. Other human ships did the same, and the alien vessels that had learned from them copied their movements. "They're not fighting like any species we've ever faced," reported a Korthic gunner. "Their ships move like living things." On the planet's surface, the first drop pods began to fall like metal rain. Colonel Janet Price led the advance team, landing right in the middle of the capital city. Her Marines spread out and began setting up defensive positions while General Murphy's main force prepared to land. But this wasn't just a human invasion. Crystal Song and her ethery warriors came down in pods that looked like giant gems. When they hit the ground, they immediately began overloading the city's power grid, plunging entire districts into darkness. Zalfini soldiers, who had learned to fight over the past months, landed in graceful ships and began using the same guerrilla tactics that humans had taught them. The peaceful herbivores had become skilled warriors, fighting to protect their families and their freedom. Emperor Vorthik watched from his fortress as his capital city fell apart around him. His soldiers, who had never faced real resistance before, didn't know how to fight an enemy that used their own city against them. "Send me their leader," he commanded. "I will challenge their strongest warrior to single combat. When I defeat him, their army will surrender." The message was delivered to Admiral Stone, who smiled when he heard it. "Tell the Emperor that we accept his challenge, but remind him that humans don't fight alone." An hour later, Vorthik stood in the great arena at the center of his palace. He wore his ceremonial armor and carried weapons that had never been defeated in battle. He expected to face one human warrior, maybe two at most. Instead, Captain Rodriguez walked into the arena, followed by Sergeant Major Kate Williams, Colonel Price, Major Anderson, and 20 other human Marines. Behind them came Crystal Song and a dozen ethery warriors. Behind them came Ambassador Thelvis and 50 Zalfini soldiers. "This is not single combat," Vorthik protested. "You're right," Rodriguez replied. "This is how humans fight. We protect each other. We fight as a family." The battle was brief but decisive. Vorthik was strong and skilled, but he was one warrior facing an army that fought as one. Every time he struck at a human, an alien defended them. Every time he turned to face an alien, a human attacked from behind. When it was over, the Emperor of the Korthic Empire lay defeated on the floor of his own arena. But Captain Rodriguez didn't kill him. Instead, he offered his hand to help the fallen emperor stand up. "The war is over," Rodriguez said. "Your people can surrender with honor, or they can keep fighting and lose everything. What will it be?" Vorthik looked around at the warriors who had defeated him. Humans who fought like demons but showed mercy to their enemies. Aliens who had learned to be strong without becoming cruel. "I surrender," he said quietly. "But tell me, human, why do you show me mercy when I showed none to others?" "Because," Rodriguez replied, "that's what separates us from you. We fight to protect people, not to hurt them." Dr. Lisa Carter spent the next weeks working with representatives from every species in the galaxy to write a new peace treaty. The Korthic Empire was dissolved, but its people were not enslaved or destroyed. Instead, they were given a chance to learn how to live without conquering others. The Galactic Council was reformed with Earth as one of its leading members. Humans became the protectors of peaceful species, while also teaching them how to defend themselves. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best way to keep peace was to be ready for war. Ambassador Thelvis stood with Commander Jake Harrison on Luna Station, looking out at the stars. 6 months ago, his people had been dying and desperate. Now, they were free and learning to be strong. "Why did you help us?" the ambassador asked. "You didn't know us." You had nothing to gain. Jake thought for a moment before answering. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what Deathworlders do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. The ambassador nodded, his large eyes reflecting. The starlight. And what happens now? Now, Jake replied, the galaxy knows that when peaceful people are threatened, they have friends who will answer with thunder. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, beings looked up at the stars and felt safe. They knew that somewhere out there, the Deathworlders of Earth were watching and waiting. And if anyone ever threatened the innocent again, humanity would answer that call just as they had answered the desperate plea of the Zalfini Republic, with thunder.